is Saffron Higgins for English Literature MA, and I am going to be discussing the Hungry Tide in the Sundarbans for the module Post-Coloniality and the Environment. I'm going to explore how the Hungry Tide explores the Sundarbans, and as this is a case study, the context of how it's presented in the novel and the real truths of the world we live in today.
So first of all, what are the Sundarbans? Well, they're one of the largest forests in the world, totaling around 10,000 kilometres squared. It's considered the doorstep of India, and India owns around 40% of it, whereas the rest is Bangladesh. The main unique thing about the Sundarbans is its range of ecological assets, such as its wide range of fauna and now endangered species. One of the most notable ones being the Bengal tiger. Now, the Sundarbans were declared government property in 1817 and declared protected in 1878. Of course, with India as a previous occupied territory by European, mainly British, colonial powers, the issues of cohabitation and nature and man, alongside the fact that the Sundarbans are particularly at risk of repercussions of climate change, which explains the novel's title, The Hungry Tide, as well as the undergoing issues colonisation and conservation have had on generations currently in the Sundarbans. The conflict of wildlife and humans and their cohabitation is covered in The Hungry Tide. For example, we can see brides that wear veils that would be usually worn during grieving out of expectation of husbands dying due to the nature of tigers. They are conserved and protected, and we can see them being represented through myth throughout the novel as well. From a statistical point of view, between 1985 and 2008, there were 789 attacks recorded, 666 resulting in death. Additionally, between these years, there were a total of 249 incidents recorded of tigers straying into villages, and between April 2020 and the end of 2021, there were 36 attacks happened, with 9 deaths happening in the course of 6 months. So as you can see from these statistics, it is an issue that has been very prominent throughout the history of the Sundarbans. Particularly, the novel is sympathetic towards the people, as they're sort of fenced in by these tiger conservation areas, but even then, sometimes tigers are straying into the villages. Also visited in the novel is the aspect of the tides, as suggested by the title, The Hungry Tides, of course. In reality, most of the Sundarbans' average land is 96 centimetres above sea level, so just under a metre. Due to the repercussions of climate change, the world is overseeing an average rise of 3.6 millimetres per year. So the looming threat of these islands disappearing overnight is growing every single year. The issue of cyclones is also covered, through one of the characters unfortunately dying in one. They've been a problem for years and years. However, in the last century, broadly speaking, cyclones have killed cattle, crops, wild animals and people. Wind speeds can reach up to 200 kilometres per hour. They have devastating effects on the people in the Sundarbans. Obviously, getting rid of crops, a lot of the resource in the forest will have devastating effects on the villages that rely on these resources. And of course, the food source for these entire villages, and sometimes the entire Sundarbans, being completely swept away. Also affecting the livelihood of the people that live in the Sundarbans is the salinity of the water, which can lead to health issues and sometimes death. Ghosh himself has written an article about it, about the dangers of opening tourist attractions and the effect that would have on the people, which brings us to... According to ARXIV, the Sundarbans brings in 205,000 tourists a year, bringing in 53 million USD in revenue. Ghosh himself brings into question the Sundarbans' ability to take care of this many tourists, but also brings into question if they have enough facilities to deal with the amount of death and injury that these tourists could suffer if they came to the Sundarbans. Not only are the people in the Sundarbans dealing with scenarios of death, homelessness, poverty and starvation, There is also a lack of medical facility and general facilities in the Sundarbans. Unfortunately, due to most of the Sundarban population being lower class and low income, and mostly reliant on the resources of the forest around them, the Sundarbans does have a lower literacy rate of around 25.71%. This not only affects the social barriers and income, but also reduces access to facilities to improve general life and health quality. This is alluded to in the novel through Nilima's plight to better Lusabari by making changes and building places and educating. She's able to do this because she comes from an upper class educated background, leading of course to her marriage with Nirmal, but she sees importance in the construction of facility and education of those around her. Well, and just how viable is it that the Sundarbans can take on this level of tourism despite the risks that come to the tourists? Well, actually, quite recently the Sundarbans closed for tourists for 3 months due to the breeding season animals. However, it's speculated that reopening the forest will have consequences for the nature, as it would be expected to return to normal, so to speak, and accommodate tourists. Well, indeed, actually, the effect of tourism seems to be an overall negative for the natural development of the Sundarbans. As Ghosh writes in his article Following the Sundarbans, he fears the constructions of projects such as the Sahara Parivas project, his words, is soaked in the blood of evicted refugees, and it turns it into a playground for these tourists. Would oversee a dramatic increase in the level of pollution, noise, detergents, etc. It would cause river blockages, and this would have a direct effect on the food supply of the entire region. Well, actually, much of the livelihood of the people in the Sundarbans does rely on the resource of the forest, while it is exploited by foresters and such. TBS News states over 150,000 Jali, Bulai and Mulai living in the coastal villages adjacent to the Sundarbans collect resources from the forest every year. So the introduction of tourists would definitely have a negative impact on their lives. Prior to the independence of India, the government of India has actually protected the forest a lot more than the British authorities did. Whether these conservation efforts negatively affect the inhabitants or not, the original exploitation from the British while it was under their rule was arguably worse. So between 1878 and 1947, 4,856 square kilometres in the southeastern part of the Sundarbans was preserved by British authorities. In this time, only people authorised by British authorities were able to enter the forest and extract timber. This directly affected the livelihoods of many people that lived in the Sundarbans to survive. Others were forcibly removed from their homes. And the reason behind this preservation was to increase the revenue for the British and upgrade the supply and variety of timber. In reality, the exploitation, tourism, lack of facility and natural biome of the Sundarbans will be disputed for years to come, especially since the Sundarbans will undergo consequences of climate change before most other places due to its proximity to the coast. And of course, the unpredictable nature that is covered in the novel in cyclones, and the effect this has on people, not only in death but in the dwindling of the resources that people in the Sundarbans rely on. All of this and more is disputed in the novel, argued for and against, and pondered, and several sides of the argument are considered. Thank you for watching. My references will be in the description of this video due to there being so many. Thank you.